sharing a few things, your name, your school, and your role, and then a quick brief answer to the question here that's listed. What's a topic that you could give a TED Talk on without any preparation? So something that you consider yourself to be well-versed in. Your response in the chat today is how we will take attendance, and we will ensure that you receive PDUs for your participation. So please make sure to put your name, your school, and role in the chat, along with an answer to the TED Talk that you give without any preparation. If you are in a room with more than one person, we know some of you are in that situation, please make sure that everyone's name is written in the chat so that we can get everyone's attendance taken and get credit where credit's due. All right, let's see what kind of experts we have in the room. While you're writing, my name's Katie Trader. I am the Literacy Education Specialist on the Literacy team at ODE. I am joined here with Tina Roberts, my colleague, who is the English Language Arts Education Specialist on our Literacy team. We're excited to be here with you today. I would be giving a TED Talk on the Green Bay Packers. I'm a Wisconsin native. I grew up down the street from Lambeau Field, and it is just in my blood. So that's what I would be teaching you all about today.
What's he?
We have someone who is well-versed on Australian Shepherds. That's amazing. I love that. I definitely want to be part of that TED Talk. What other experts do we have in the room today? Oh my God. New Kids on the Block. Rebecca, yes, I'm joining your TED Talk. Fantasy football. Brian, I'm hitting you up in August next year. You can help me with my draft. Welcome, everyone. Oh, Summer Hay / Alfalfa. Okay. All right, interesting. All right. Once again, please make sure you get your name as well as anyone who's in the room with you. Put their name also in the chat so that we can make sure that you receive PDUs for your participation today. All right, we're going to keep moving along here. So today we hope to develop a shared understanding of disciplinary literacy and the research that supports it. We also hope to identify characteristics of high-quality literacy instruction across a variety of different subject areas. And we're hoping to provide some time today to increase disciplinary literacy into some upcoming lesson plans. So just to set the vision for us, we're going to take a step back and look at the big picture. ODE has a vision that every student, every day, is engaged in meaningful, affirming grade level instruction. And we know that this is possible to achieve. And really the work that Tina and I do every day at the ODE is done in support of this vision. We know that it is possible. We know that the deep work of literacy learning extends far beyond the elementary literacy block. That's a little bit of what we'll talk about today. We wanted to paint a clear picture for what we want every student to experience in their literacy learning. It would be this. Our ultimate vision would be that every student experiences these things in their education in Oregon. We want consistent and great engagement with grade level literacy learning. We want to provide opportunities for students to speak, write, problem solve, and talk about rigorous text with ideas that are rich and meaningful. We want literacy instruction to build knowledge and skills over time. We want learning materials and experiences to reflect students' identities and perspectives and experiences. We want learning to feel truly meaningful for them. We know that belonging allows students to take risks with their learning and engage in rich discussions that they might not otherwise take if they weren't in that space. So we know that building a sense of belonging for every student is really important. And we also want students to take agency of their literacy learning through collaboration and reflection. So we know that if we want to build this kind of space for students and we want to provide this experience for literacy learning for students, then we have to ensure that we're reinforcing literacy skills in every subject area in school. As you probably are well aware, we have these two literacy frameworks that form the foundation of our work. to achieve that vision that I just spoke about, that vision that every student is engaged in meaningful, affirming grade level instruction. And the first one is here on the left. It's the Early Literacy Framework that was published in 2022. It focuses on developing foundational skills, background knowledge, vocabulary, and comprehension for K-5 students. And then on the right is the Adolescent Literacy Framework. And this was just published recently, last winter, and it focuses on building disciplinary literacy in secondary classrooms. And taken together, these two frameworks offer guiding principles that elevate a few central ideas. And we've color-coded them here because there's some overlapping themes that I want to point out. So both of these frameworks really see students in Oregon as full of literacy strengths and potential. We know that our students can accomplish anything. We also know that we want to build spaces where students feel that they belong and that that's crucial to their literacy learning. Both of the frameworks believe that families and communities strengthen literacy learning. And perhaps more importantly, we know that investing in educators' knowledge and instructional skills is truly essential. We want every single person teaching in Oregon to feel equipped with the skills and the knowledge needed to elevate literacy at every grade level, no matter what subjects you're teaching. So stick with me for an analogy here. So think of this beautiful tree as meaningful, affirming grade level instruction that students experience in their school classrooms, in your classrooms. This tree is lush, it is full, it is vibrant. It's just like your classroom. There are vibrant spaces where rich learning takes place. And beneath all of the leaves is a sturdy base that gives the tree strength and it determines its shape. And that base is really literacy. So literacy is the foundation for learning in every classroom, no matter what the subject area is, no matter the grade level. And for this reason, we all need to be literacy teachers. Every teacher in the building, no matter what their position, has to build these literacy skills in their content area and elevate literacy in every lesson that they're teaching. Because if we intentionally strengthen literacy in those content areas, then we're strengthening a student's overall academic experience. And we know this to be true because research tells us it's true. We know that research tells us, studies have shown that when reading and writing is embedded into instruction as a way to deepen students' understanding of history, of science, of math, it leads to improved academic achievement in those content areas. So as students become more fluent readers in upper elementary and in secondary grades, their literacy learning expands beyond the language arts classroom into all classes and disciplines. So we use this term disciplinary literacy to describe the strategies for teaching literacy skills across content areas. And each subject area has some unique language, some unique structures and texts that students have to be proficient at to engage deeply and meaningfully with the content. So students need to learn how to navigate those unique features. And they start to understand that reading and writing in one subject area might actually differ and look a little bit different from reading and writing in another. Through building literacy across content areas, students will become adaptable. They will become critical thinkers who are prepared to apply literacy practices across many different contexts. Okay, so I want you to grab a piece of scrap paper, any size will do, and you're going to jot quickly down a 3-column chart. You can see it there on the screen if you're unsure of what a 3-column chart looks like. And we want to put a label at the top of each column. So the first column will say looks like, the middle column will say sounds like, and the last column will say feels like. I'll give you a second to do that. And we're going to do a quick sketch and a write. So you're thinking about, what does disciplinary literacy look like? What does it sound like? And what does it feel like in a classroom? You can use words, you can use pictures. I'm going to give you like a minute and a half to quickly sketch and write some words about what disciplinary literacy looks like, sounds like, and feels like. Go ahead and start. Okay, take 30 more seconds, jot down one or two more ideas. Okay, so at the top of your Teams video space here, there is a button with a little smiley face that says React. Go ahead and find that. And if you click on it, there's going to be a couple of different options of emojis. You're going to pick an emoji, and I'm going to read some features of disciplinary literacy, and I want you to send your emoji, click on the emoji when I say something that you had written down. Okay. So please choose an emoji and go ahead and send it along if you wrote down something similar to the idea that students are reading authentic texts. Great. See a couple of thumbs. Wonderful. What about instruction? The teacher is doing instruction that shows students how to mark up a text or use graphic organizers or different like learning tools like this. Anyone have something like that? Great. Teachers doing explicit modeling of skills. Anyone have something like that? Great. It sounds like students using vocabulary. Anyone have anything like that? Great. It sounds like students justifying their reasoning or like making an argument or using evidence to state their case. Great. Students are engaging in collaborative dialogue. They're talking to each other. Sounds like students explaining their thinking. Mhm. And then it feels like students are engaged. Students want to be there, they want to understand, and they want to learn. That's what disciplinary literacy feels like. Yes. Okay. Thanks for engaging in that activity with me. So this slide really articulates what we want our students' experiences in literacy to feel like, to look like, and sound like. So today we're going to talk about three different instructional practices that elevate literacy, and they really are meant to elevate literacy in any content area that you teach, whether it's PE, whether it's a high school CTE welding class, whether it's a math class in middle school. So let's dive in. So the first practice is vocabulary. We want to make sure that we're teaching the words that truly matter. And no matter what you're teaching, you should dedicate a portion of your classroom lesson to explicit vocabulary instruction. And when we talk about instruction around vocabulary, we can do that in two different ways. There's some teaching that is direct instruction in what a word means. And then there's also instruction in strategies that helps students independently acquire vocabulary, right? So we're doing both of those things when we're teaching vocabulary. And we know that this is a really impactful practice because, again, research tells us that it is. Research tells us that when we integrate explicit vocabulary instruction into our classrooms, it strengthens their learning of content and retention across subjects. It builds their word knowledge and word strategy skills. It helps them comprehend, right? So let's think about what this looks like. Really, we want to identify words that are critical and conceptually central for understanding a passage. You're not teaching just any word. You're thinking about what are the words that are really critical for students understanding what I'm talking about. You can select one or two essential words to teach before reading the passage. And you can have a very simple routine for introducing them where you provide a brief student-friendly definition. You provide maybe an example of what it is and a non-example of what it is, or perhaps you show a visual representation of the word. And then as you're reading a text, you can stop intermittently to provide meaning about other essential words, but really we want to explicitly introduce one to two before you begin. And I want to draw your attention to the side there because there's different types of words that we teach our students, right? There's those discipline specific words that are like the science words like velocity or refraction, or the math words like quadrilateral. But there's also a whole host of academic words that students need to have explicit teaching in, words that we wouldn't, that are, kind of content agnostic, like words like interpret or contrast or insignificant. These don't necessarily align with a certain topic or content area, but they're critical words that students need to know what they mean, and so we need to explicitly teach them. So just keep that in mind as you're choosing words to teach. So we can also teach students how to derive meanings of unknown words using context. And so I put like a reading routine here on the screen that you can use to explicitly model how great readers find clues in their surrounding sentences to help determine the meanings of the words that they don't understand. So I might model this reading routine by underlining a word and just thinking aloud about it. So I might say, here's a reading passage that we're reading today. First, I'm going to underline this word that I don't know, and I circle or underline the word obstacles. That's a tricky word that I don't know in this text. So now I'm going to reread the sentence with the word obstacle in it and look for clues to what it means. And I'll do that. I'll read it out loud for students. And then I might think out loud again and say, that sentence just tells us that they came across obstacles, but it doesn't tell us what an obstacle is. So now I'm thinking about step 3, and I'll reread the sentences around the word, near the word, to look for clues about the meaning. And I'll reread those sentences. And then I'll think aloud again and I'll say, okay, here the author tells us that one obstacle was very high temperatures. Being that hot would stop or slow down their work. And in the next sentence, the author gives us 2 other obstacles: no shade from the sun, and the rocks and the sand were hard to move because they were too hot to touch. So I'm going to take all of that information together and I'm going to make a smart guess and think that obstacles means anything that makes it difficult for you to do something, because the examples that the author gave us were things that were hard, things that made it difficult to explore King Tut's tomb. So in that way, I'm thinking out loud for students and modeling how to use that routine to figure out the meaning of a word. And again, this reading routine can be used anywhere from, secondary students all the way up to high school. You just modify it so it makes sense for your students and obviously the context of what you're teaching. But you could use it in a PE class, you could use it in a CTE class, you could use it in a math class. This is a great reading routine to have in your back pocket. Okay, another thing I want to address here is using morphology and how it can help your students understand the meaning of words. When we say morphology, we mean the parts of the words. So things like a prefix or a suffix. And these things can be explicitly taught because they help derive meaning, right? So if I know what the prefix of a word means, or what a suffix of a word means, it can help me understand the meaning of multisyllabic words. Similarly, I can teach Latin and Greek words or parts of a word, like the roots of the words, and that can help derive meaning. So an example of this is if I teach my students that endo is Greek for the word inside, and exo is Greek for the word outside, right? So students who know that will see that in future words like endoskeleton, and they might say, oh, okay, endoskeleton, the skeleton is on the inside of that animal. I know that word means inside, so that's giving me meaning about what this word is, right? So in that way, we can explicitly break down pieces of the word, the morphology, and use that to explicitly teach our students how to find meaning based on that, right? So now I'm going to hand off to my colleague, Tina, who's going to talk about 2 more practices that you can use to elevate literacy.
Thanks, Katie. So practice 2 is all about modeling how experts think. So research tells us that providing explicit instruction and modeling of comprehension strategies works to accelerate learning for students who need the most support. And doing these things helps build transferable skills for students to use across texts and tasks. So essentially, students are building their reading comprehension toolkits that they can carry with them from one content area to the next and have numerous tools from which to choose in order to support their own comprehension development. So what does this look like in practice? PNQR is an active reading strategy designed to help readers engage deeply to improve their comprehension and to monitor their understanding of a text. So step 1 is to pause. Readers stop from time to time to consider what they're reading. Step 2 is to notice. Readers identify key information. They identify interesting points to analyze. They make connections. I'm saying they, but we. These are all things that we inherently do. And the point is we want to make these things visible for our students. We make connections, things we already know. We note when we're confused, and we can use a fix-up strategy as needed. Step 3 is questioning. So readers ask questions about the text to clarify understanding or to deepen their engagement with the text. And finally is readers react from they form a personal response or a personal connection, or they form an opinion about what they've just read. So to make that visible, first, the teacher models by reading the first section aloud and modeling how an expert in the field thinks and notices things in the text. And then the students have an opportunity to practice, and the teacher has the students apply the process to the remainder of the text, taking notes or stopping and jotting, whatever they're thinking in that moment. And then is an opportunity for discussion. So students share their notes in pairs or small groups to deepen their understanding. This provides a rehearsal before moving into the whole class share. Research consistently shows that students need regular opportunities for extended discussion and writing about text in order to make meaning and to form interpretations. So when students talk and write deeply about what they've read, it moves them beyond surface level understanding into deep, rich understanding and engagement. So providing these opportunities promotes deeper comprehension. It helps students internalize ideas rather than just recalling them. And it also builds essential thinking skills. So things like analyzing evidence or questioning an author's choices or forming their own interpretations of a text. It also, when students engage in discourse, they're also exposed to multiple perspectives. So they hear how their peers are making meaning from the same text, and that broadens their understanding and it strengthens their own reasoning. And then finally, we know research shows that classrooms that regularly integrate rich discussion and writing experiences have significant literacy growth. So really, talking and writing about text meaning isn't an add-on. It's a critical part of developing strong and thoughtful readers. This slide shows what it actually looks like to give students scaffolded opportunities to rehearse and extend their thinking about reading. So the goal is to structure talk and writing so that every student has a way to engage in deeper comprehension. Every kid has an access point. That's what this slide is really about. So we begin with the setup. We want to give students a high-level comprehension prompt, something that can't be answered by recall alone. This helps ensure that students must engage in those higher order thinking skills like interpreting and analyzing and reasoning about the text. Then we want to give students an opportunity to think and jot. So I might say, write one idea or one piece of evidence that you want to share. Just a few words. And so students jot down a short phrase, maybe 5 or 10 words, in order to anchor their thinking and to prevent them from going in cold. So this is the first rehearsal opportunity for students. And then comes partner talk. So students share their initial thinking with a partner. We can provide them sentence stems to encourage text-based reasoning and to make sure that each partner is grounding their points in evidence. This is another rehearsal opportunity. And then I might probe and ask, what's another idea or piece of evidence that reinforces your thinking? Because this pushes students to go deeper into the text and to strengthen their reasoning overall. And then we give students an opportunity to extend their writing by turning their partner's idea into a paragraph. So I might choose to have them turn their own idea into a paragraph, but if I ask them to turn their partner's idea into a paragraph, I am really asking them to explain what they heard and then extend their partner's point by adding insight of their own. So again, sentence stems can be provided to support students who need more structure. And then students share their own thinking in addition to what they heard from their partner. So it encourages active listening because they have to pay attention to what their partner said and incorporate their own thinking into their writing. And it lowers the pressure for students who may be nervous about sharing their own original ideas. And taken together, these routines really provide meaningful, scaffolded practice that helps students rehearse and extend and ultimately internalize deeper ways of thinking about and engaging with texts. So for this next activity, you're going to choose one of 4 scenarios on slides 24 through 30. You have access to the participant deck, so you'll be able to access those scenarios. We'll take about 5 minutes to read the scenario that you select independently. And as you read, I would like you to reflect on the 3 guiding questions here on this slide. Those questions will help guide your discussion. So first, how do teachers in the scenario ensure that students read, write, speak, and think as experts in their discipline? As you're looking at the scenario, pay attention to the instructional moves and routines and expectations that position students as the disciplinary thinkers, not just students as completing tasks, right? And then second, consider what types of scaffolds the teacher uses in the scenario to help all students access the literacy demands of the discipline. So look for things like modeling and sentence stems and text supports and guided routines so that any structures that ensure every learner can participate meaningfully so that there's an access point for every student in the room. And then finally, reflect on what ideas this scenario gives you for strengthening disciplinary literacy in your own classroom. So think about the practices that you might adapt or adopt, routines that you might try, shifts that you could make to help students in your classroom engage more deeply with disciplinary thinking. And then once you've reflected, you will go into breakout rooms to share your insights with your group. So be ready to talk in your breakout groups about the insights that you notice and that you want to elevate from the scenarios that you've investigated. And then be prepared to come back and share out to the whole group a highlight from your breakout group discussion. So first is 5 minutes to review the scenario. So we'll start the timer right now. We'll give you 5 minutes. I'll call you back in 5 minutes and then we'll head into breakout groups. Okay. Thanks for taking some time to review the scenarios. I'm going to skip ahead in the slide deck to get to our breakout room slide. So we're going to head into breakout rooms. You will join your group. Start by briefly introducing yourselves if you don't already know each other. Share the grade level and subject that you teach. This helps everyone situate the different perspectives and contexts in the room. And then after introductions, each person will share their response to one of the prompts on the screen based on the scenario that you reviewed during that scenario review time. We'll move into breakout rooms for 10 minutes. We'll come back together at 2:45. Please, when you come back, be prepared to share out some thinking that you heard. So we'll model what we just shared about sharing something that your partner shared. You can share either something that a takeaway for you or something that you heard someone say in your breakout group. But please come back prepared to share.
Did you see the note about Bethany?
I did. I'm just replying really quickly here.
Thank you.
I just created random rooms, but I'm sure they'll be okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes. How much time did you say they were going to have?
10 minutes. So if they can
Okay.
come back at 2:45, that would be great.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'll go ahead and close the room.
Perfect. Thank you.
Organizers are.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for engaging in breakout room discussion. I hope you had fruitful discussion. I do want to invite a little bit of sharing. So what is a high-level takeaway from your breakout room discussion? Please feel free to unmute and share out loud, or put your share in the chat.
So this is what I've heard is heard, because I don't know if he's like super upset.
And also, if you're not sharing out loud, please go ahead and mute. Lots of structure. Thank you, Sarah. Lots of opportunities to learn in different ways. That's great. What else? One or two more ideas. A lot of discourse. Yes, opportunities to talk. Thank you. And incorporating scientific vocabulary into free response questions with immediate feedback. Thank you so much. Free teaching for the second scenario. Yes, that's a really powerful strategy too. So thank you. We asked you to bring lesson plans with you for this session. And so we want to give you an opportunity to work independently on a little reflection activity where you can put some of this to use, hopefully right away. So you will take the lesson plan that you brought with you, hopefully something that you'll be using in your classroom soon, and review it through this lens of instructional visibility. Throughout the whole presentation, we've really tried to elevate ways to make teaching comprehension strategies visible. And we want you to have an opportunity to practice what we've been talking about. So I'm going to share some instructions on this slide and on the next slide. And then you will have an opportunity to actually code your lesson plans. So initially, we want you to annotate your lesson plan in this way. V for explicit vocabulary, places where you can explicitly teach vocabulary in your lesson. TA for those think aloud moments where you can model thinking aloud for your students. You can use the code ST for strategy modeling. So where you want to model for your students how to do a thing like question the text or make an inference, for example. And then code with GP for guided practice. So this is where students have an opportunity to engage in and rehearse those practices that you just were modeling. And then we want you to take it a step further. And so those vocabulary words that you called out before, pick 3 to 5 of those that you really want to get specific about. These should be like a mix of tier 2 academic vocabulary and then those key content specific terms that students really need in order to access comprehension. And for each word, decide how you will introduce it, whether through a context clue from the text or a morphology breakdown like Katie shared earlier, through clear examples and non-examples, script a student-friendly definition, and think about adding an image or a quick visual that you can use. So like the Freyer model. And then think about the scenarios, or sorry, return to the lesson plan and think about the text that you previously highlighted to plan your think aloud and determine the specific comprehension strategy that students will need for that particular section of text. Maybe it's, again, making an inference or monitoring for meaning. And then script out explicitly what you'll say as you model your thinking for that think aloud. Your script should follow a clear pattern. So you're naming the strategy. I'm making an inference right here and point to the evidence in the text because the text says this, and then state the conclusion. So because the text says this, I think this. That structure not only makes your thinking visible for the students, but it also gives the students a reliable model that they can emulate when it's their turn to practice. So we want to give you about 15 minutes now to review your lesson plan and do the coding and then also do the scripting of these instructional moves that will set your students up for deeper comprehension as you move into the lesson. So we'll take about 15 minutes. Please do this activity with the idea that you'll come back to the whole group and share how you've elevated your lesson plan in some way. Okay, so we'll take 15 minutes. We'll come back at about 3:05.
The lesson is review and upcoming lesson plan. Take. Strategy.
All right. I would like to invite you back. Thank you for taking some time to do your lesson plan review and reflection. At this point, we really would like to hear from you. Think about the work that you just did, and then you can either unmute or in the chat share what's one literacy practice that we discussed today that you found or that you found in your lesson plan or that you could use to strengthen your lesson plan. What's something that you added that made literacy instruction stronger in your lesson plan? Using sentence frames in your own lesson to model what you want the students to say. Thank you, Hayden. I love that idea. Adding more discussion, using discussion stems and Socratic seminars. Socratic seminars are such a powerful, powerful strategy. Guided note taking and closed paragraphs. Yeah. What else? These are really great too. Like you're sharing us, making visible for us, but also like you're sharing with each other. People are stealing these ideas and writing them down too. So please don't be shy about sharing. Something else, a literacy practice that we discussed today that you found in your lesson plan or something that you are able to use to strengthen literacy instruction in your lesson. How about one more idea? Thank you, Rebecca. In math, connecting new math terms with words we already know. Yes, distributive property and distribute. That's great. Making those connections for students is super helpful. Highlighting key ideas, great. Finding more discussion opportunities within your lesson plan, that's great. And there are ways to do that and, foster great discussion, especially if students are shy about sharing out loud. All right, thank you so much. Um, this slide really brings together the three powerful practices that we've talked about today that strengthen disciplinary literacy in any classroom. Explicitly teaching vocabulary, modeling expert thinking, and building in structured talk and writing time. So when we think about explicit vocabulary instruction, we want to make sure that students have access to the words that matter the most for understanding the text. So both the discipline-specific terms and the cross-disciplinary academic words like analyze or justify, using simple word routines like the Freyer model that I mentioned earlier, using student-friendly definitions and examples and non-examples. All of these things help students build real ownership of the terms, especially if they're the ones like making those connections, right? So your Monday move for explicitly teaching vocabulary is to look ahead at your lesson plans and simply highlight the vocabulary that you plan to explicitly pre-teach. This small shift can make a big difference in student comprehension. Also, modeling how experts think. So students need to see what it looks like and sounds like when a scientist or a mathematician or a historian approaches a text. This means thinking out loud and teaching students how to annotate or paraphrase and modeling the decoding or the evidence-based reasoning strategies that disciplinary experts use naturally. We all do all of these things automatically. We need to make it explicit and visible for our students. So the Monday move here is to dedicate just 3 to 5 minutes in your next lesson to explicitly modeling how you read like an expert in your discipline. And then finally, building in structured talk and writing times. Turn and talk opportunities before whole group discussion give students space to process and to rehearse. And sometimes that rehearsal is the most critical part. It gives them an opportunity to practice using academic language. You can provide discussion stems, which also increases access because students know how to enter the conversation then using the language of the discipline. And the Monday move here is simple. You replace one hands up question with a structured partner discussion. That single change helps ensure that every student, not just the handful of volunteers, gets to think and speak and reason, really grapple with the content. So together, these practices, explicit vocabulary, expert modeling, and structured talk and writing, create an environment where students read and write and speak and think more confidently in your discipline. So which one of these resonates most with you? Please put that in the chat. And in the participant slide deck, you have access to these resources. I especially want to call out the Disciplinary Reading Collaborative Learning Guide. That is a resource from the Instructional Frameworks website, specifically from the Adolescent Literacy Framework portion of the Instructional Frameworks website. Those, there are so many resources on the Instructional Frameworks website for implementing disciplinary literacy strategies, both reading and writing. So if you haven't ever checked that out, I would highly encourage you to do so. Those resources are companions for implementing the adolescent literacy framework, and they are extremely helpful. And finally, we've got a few minutes left. We would love to answer any questions that you might have. This is our contact information on this slide. Please reach out if there's ever anything we can do to support your work. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, hanging in there with us on a Friday afternoon. We really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. And please, if you have questions, let us know.